إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فإنه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. عباد الله، فإن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as He should be praised, the Creator and the Lord of all things. And I praise Him and I thank Him. And I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from our evil sins and from the actions of our own selves. I bear witness that there is no true deity worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that His Prophet Mohamed sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His final and last messenger. O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and do not die except in a state of submission, in a state of Islam. O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say the truth. Say what is correct. If you do so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will correct and rectify your actions. And whoever obeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His messenger, then he has already attained the ultimate success. Everyone, this is in Islam, the best of speech is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best of guidance is the guidance of His messenger Mohamed sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the worst of matters are newly innovated matters in this religion, because whatever is newly innovated in this religion will lead you astray, and whatever will lead you astray will lead you in hellfire. Before I start, can I ask the brothers, if they find a gap in front of them, please fill it in. I can actually see us standing from here, quite a few spots that are empty. The closer you get to the first row, the more rewarding it is. In the next few minutes, inshallah, I want to talk about one of the issues sometimes that I hear a complaint of, and we all sometimes complain about, is that sometimes we complain about feeling distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We complain that we somehow have lost the spiritual high that we have felt previously at one point or another. Whether it is the spiritual high or sweetness of Iman that we have experienced when we first, for example, see the Kaaba, or when it's our first time entering the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or perhaps it is the first time when we have continuously decided to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and started engaging in our acts of worship of prayers 5 times a day on time and coming to the masjid. That beautiful sense of sweetness that we have sensed before, after a while, we might complain that we don't feel it anymore. And we're wondering what happens. And we long to feel that feeling once again, because we do feel that it has affected our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask ourselves, what went wrong? But this is something that is not, uncommon. That does happen because maybe perhaps we don't understand the dynamic of how things work in terms of relationships. Because we have to think of what we're doing as a relationship we're establishing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Unlike any other relationship we have perhaps with human beings, once, or anything we have in our life, once it starts becoming routinic and mechanical, then it loses its flavor. Similar to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the problem happens is once our acts become routinic, becomes mechanical, ritual. You do it, and then you move on, for the sake of just doing it. Once this happens, really, we lose a sense of why we're doing this. We use the sense of spirituality of that connection we get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that is not good, because what it does, it causes a rift or a distance between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once this happens, it can escalate to even forgetting why you're doing it. And then what is the point of doing it? And then you escalate a bit more to leaving that act and not feeling any difference. Maybe in the beginning, a day or two, but then after a while, that's it. We start moving further and further away. This is why it's imperative we address this aspect. Now, this is called, if you want to call it, give it a name or a title, it can be called spiritual numbness. Things start becoming numb. You don't feel it anymore. The prayer you're doing it, you don't feel the effect. Perhaps the Quran that you're reading, you don't feel the effect anymore. And that is the spiritual numbness. We have to try to keep away from it. Now, once again, this is not something that is different. The Prophet ﷺ had showed us in different ways, and even the Quran, but I'm just going to mention one hadith quickly, is that narrated by Abdullah ibn Amr al-As. The Prophet ﷺ, he told us, and he warned us, he said, إِنَّ الْإِيمَانَ لَا يَخْلَقُ فِي جَوْفِ أَحَدِكُمْ كَمَا يَخْلَقُ الثَّوْبِ. That the iman in one of us wears out. You know, when you have it, similar to how the Prophet said, he said, similar to how your article of clothing wears out. Whenever we buy a new article of clothing, it has that sense to it. It's something that is new, it's refreshing. We're like, this is good, you wear it. But after a while, it wears out, and that sense of newness that you have goes away. Similar to that is your iman. And so you need to rejuvenate, renew that iman you have every once in a while. And the Prophet ﷺ said, فَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ أَنْ يُجَدِّدَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to renew your iman. Of course, this is one way of doing it. So what are the things that we can do to help remove that numbness? I'm going to mention, inshallah, quickly 4 things. Maybe if we have time, 5. But one of the most important things that we can do is seek some sort of a role model. To look at those who are higher and above us. Now, this is something that's understandable in our worldly things. They always tell you, aspire to be something great. And so you look at the best doctors, the best engineers, the best technicians, whatever the case is. You look and you want to be like them. What did they do? How did they get there? And then you follow in their path. We seek consultants. We consult individuals who are CEOs. How do you get there? This is something that we understand is logical. But we forget that it also applies to the spiritual realm, which is more important. It is because this spirituality drives us forward. That sense of sweetness gives us pleasure in the acts that we do, and so when we lose it, we lose that sense and drive perhaps. And so when I say we look at role models, it's an instruction perhaps, an understanding from how the companions understood things and the followers of that, is that when it comes to aspects of religiosity, of iman, of righteousness, you look at those who are above you. Why? Because you want to aspire to attain what they have had, what they achieved. It's also you want to compete in something that is good. This competition is what we should be competing with. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts talking about Jannah, and He starts about the rewards and the hereafter, He said, وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسْ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. So in that, let the competitors compete. And this is the only time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to compete. It's never to compete about worldly possessions. But yet nowadays we have done the opposite. We are competing in our worldly things. Who is more popular? Who has better clothing fashion? Who has a better car, the bigger house, the taller building, the more money, number material in their bank accounts? This is what we're competing in, but this is not what we're supposed to compete in. Because when it comes to worldly situations, the Prophet ﷺ instructs us to do the opposite. Look at who is less fortunate than you. Because it will give you a sense of being able to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the reward or the pleasures or bounties He gave you. that you would not say that Allah did not give me anything, but it also prevents you from being preoccupied for what truly is more important, which is your relationship with Allah. And so we need to look at those who are higher. If you ever want to look at that, just a simple example. Every successful Islamic figure or Muslim figure, whether male or female, that you can ever come across in history, if you look at really what made them successful behind the scenes, you will find that it is their prayers. Just as simple as that. Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. Name them. Aisha radiallahu anha. Just think about anybody who's successful. Look at what made them successful. Why are they remembered? It's their actions. But what was behind all of this is their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's why it's important to look at people who are above. Can I ask the young ones to please move away from the walls and the bookshelves? They're falling asleep. Nudge the person behind you, beside you, so they can wake up. Just move away from the walls. You guys are old enough, mashallah, unless you have a back problem. Brothers, yes, at the corner. You guys, move away from the walls. Now, what is the second thing we can do? Now, the second thing actually has to do with an understanding of Iman, that it rises and it decreases. But it also has the background of understanding that the hadith I mentioned earlier, that Iman wears out, so we need to renew it, which means that you need to engage your Iman. You need to try to get out of the uni-track form, the routine thing that we do. Now, what do I mean by that? What happens is that when we first feel that sense of spirituality, quite often it's because of it's a single act of worship that we do. Whether it's a humanitarian work, feeding the poor, for example, we feel a rush from that at a spiritual level, but then we do it after once in a while, continue doing it, and that's the only thing we do, we think it's the most important thing, it becomes routine. If it was the Quran that we read at night, or the Qiyam al-Layl that we do, we stick to that, it becomes routine. Now, I'm not saying to stop doing that, no, continue that action, but what we need to do is engage ourselves in different actions of worship. Other things. Engage in Quran and prayers and humanitarian work. It doesn't have to be something that's consistent. Keep one that's consistent, that is fine. But every once in a while, diversify. Once a week, go help somebody. Go visit a Muslim in the hospital. Go to the graveyard. Help wash a dead person. Different acts of worship. Engage in it. Now, where do we get this from? We get this from the hadith where one of the companions had complained to the Prophet ﷺ, just to reiterate that this is something that does happen. And the Prophet ﷺ had taught us how to deal with this. He complained to the Prophet ﷺ, the hardness of the heart. When he says, I feel there's a bit of toughness, there's a hardness in my heart. So what did the Prophet ﷺ instruct him to do? He said, Imsah ra'si yatim. He said, wipe on the head of an orphan. Now he's instructing them to be good to an orphan. Go to an orphan, take care of them. Show affection to them. That's an act of worship. It is something different than what he's usually engaged in. You go and participate in something else. You know, they tell you, I'm going to relate this back to a worldly thing that we do because we understand this. They tell you to be successful, you have to diversify your portfolio. Get different experiences. It's amazing how we're good at worldly things. But a lot of times they also do relate to our spiritual life. They're not any different. It's our human nature. We need to diversify or otherwise we get bored. So you want to step away from this routine a little bit. Continue your doing. That's fine. In fact, you should never leave it. But do other things on the side every once in a while. And some of the scholars say perhaps this is the wisdom behind why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated seasonal different acts of worship. We have the 10th of the 10 days of the Hijjah, the 10 days of Muharram or the month of Muharram, the fasting of the day of Arafah, the fasting of Muharram, the month of Ramadan comes once a year. Different things happen. You diversify, you engage in different things. This is why if you notice, when Ramadan comes, for example, something new, you do something that's different in the first few days, it is different. You feel this Iman level. When 10th of Muharram comes or the Arafah, there's something different. There's a movement in your heart. When Hajj comes and you go, there's something different. Unless you're blessed, of course, with doing Hajj every year, then it becomes routine, and then you need to do something else that is different. And it's amazing that the people who go every single year will recognize the difference when they start talking or looking at the eyes of people who is the first time going to Hajj and the first time seeing the Kaaba. What is their level of spirituality? They'll notice the difference in them. And this is what we're talking about, because this is something that's they did different. So you need to do also something that is different. So that's the second thing we can do. The third thing we can do very quickly is that we need to, which is very important, reduce sins as much as we can. Because what we're trying to do is elevate our spirituality. And sins do the opposite. They bring it down. And so it is counterintuitive that you want to go up while doing the same thing, something that brings you down. Sins prevent you from feeling that sweetness of Iman. And so we have to refrain as much as we can from performing or acting upon sins. Now, I'm not saying it is possible for us to be angels and not sin at all. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there are continuous things, consistent things that we usually do. Stop them. And if we fall into a sin every once in a while, we need to repent and ask Allah for forgiveness and stop it. This is what we need to do. Otherwise, if we continue performing sins, what would happen is the envelope will form on our hearts. And it will increase. And a heart that has been completely enveloped in darkness, however can it feel? Iman. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم وأغفر له. إن الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Dear sisters in Islam, dealing with Imanic numbness in Imanic spirituality, there are a couple other things I'm going to mention quickly to help us overcome this. But just quickly to mention, the first thing we talked about is that you need to look at those who have higher Iman and higher spirituality, more righteous than you are, because they are a source of guidance, a source of inspiration. The second thing we need perhaps to do is to diversify our acts of worship every once in a while, to engage in something that is new that can bring this about to us and fuel us. And the third I had mentioned is that we need to stop sins. Now the third, and I'm going to try to the fourth, and I'm going to try to mention the fifth quickly, is that the fourth thing that we need to do is to actually desire this in the first place. I know some of us might be asking, I don't know what he's talking about. I never felt this. Because you haven't experienced it yet. But just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean it's not there. Because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned it's there. And others before you have felt it. And this is what drives a lot of people. But as we're doing this, it's important for us to remember that this spiritual high that we're seeking is not a means of itself, by the way. It's not a means, it's a byproduct. We're doing this because we want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We engage in different acts of worship to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that sweetness comes as a byproduct. And so when you do different acts of worship, for example, to please Allah, the consequence is that. So we have to be very careful. Because if we're not careful, if we start seeking the spirituality as a means in itself, then we might fall